Welcome to Brainwaves and Breakthroughs.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah,
So this time we're going to be tackling the gig economy.
the gig economy.
And we've got excerpts here from this article, pasted text,
Okay.
which seems to be kind of like a broad overview of the whole thing and all the different aspects of it.
All right.
So are you ready to kind of explore how work is transforming, like right before our eyes?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a really fascinating topic to discuss, especially given how rapidly everything's been changing.
Okay, so before we get too far into it,
Yeah.
could we just define exactly what the gig economy is?
Sure.
Because I feel like I hear that term everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we all agree on what it means.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It is kind of a buzzword these days.
It is.
But in essence, I think the gig economy refers to this shift away from the traditional model of job for life.
Right.
So we're talking about, short-term contracts, freelance work, independent contracting. And a lot of this is facilitated by online platforms.
Okay, so instead of my dad, working at the same company for 30 years,
Right.
it's more like a series of projects or gigs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the article actually points out that this isn't just, a small trend. This is impacting a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's estimated that 34% to 43% of the U.S. workforce
Wow.
is already involved in some form of gig work.
That's a lot of people.
That's a huge chunk of the working population.
Yeah, so that's pretty wild.
It is.
What do you think is driving that? Why is this happening?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Is it just a millennial thing?
I think it's more complicated than just generational preferences or anything like that.
Right.
Technology definitely plays a huge role here.
Yeah.
Think about how easy it is now
Right.
for freelancers to connect with clients globally,
Yeah.
thanks to the internet and all these platforms.
The internet makes everything easier.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
But then there's also, you can't ignore the economic side of things either.
Right.
Recessions, globalization, automation, all of these things have contributed to job insecurity.
Yeah.
And that's kind of pushed people towards these alternative work models.
Yeah. So it's like a perfect storm of factors all coming together.
It really is.
It makes you wonder if companies are intentionally kind of taking advantage of that.
Well, that's a valid concern and something that, we should explore further as we go through this.
All right, sure.
But on the company side, you can see why this model is appealing.
Okay.
There are benefits for them in
there?
terms of reduced labor costs.
Okay.
Think about it. They don't have to provide benefits or paid time off to gig workers.
Okay.
And they have more flexibility to
Right.
scale their workforce up or down as needed.
So they can be more agile and responsive to
Exactly.
changes and things.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But while all that's happening and the companies are benefiting,
Yeah.
what about the people actually doing the gig work?
Right.
Are they getting a fair shake in all of this?
I think that's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And honestly, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Some people really thrive in the gig economy,
Okay.
but others struggle with the inherent instability of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So there are definite pros and cons for the workers.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's dive into those.
Okay.
Let's start with some of the downsides.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges that gig workers face?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is just the lack of a stable income.
Okay.
Gig work can be really unpredictable.
Right.
And your income can fluctuate wildly from month to month.
Yeah, that must be so stressful.
It is.
Just not knowing how much you're going to make.
Right. And especially when you don't have that traditional employer.
Right.
Gig workers often miss out on benefits.
Like health insurance, paid time off, retirement contributions.
Yeah, all the things that you kind of expect with a
Right.
normal job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it creates a much more precarious situation.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of long-term financial security.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So lack of stable income, lack of benefits. Are there any other major downsides?
Yeah, unfortunately there are.
Okay.
Gig work can sometimes involve really demanding schedules,
Okay.
long hours,
Right.
even safety risks. especially in certain sectors.
Right.
And workers often have limited control over their working conditions.
Yeah, so it's not all like working from the beach with your laptop.
Right, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Yeah.
And then there's also the whole issue of algorithm-driven management,
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
which is becoming increasingly prevalent,
Okay.
in these platform-based gigs.
Yeah.
So, workers' earnings, their job assignments,
Yeah.
even their ratings are often determined by algorithms.
That may not always be transparent or fair.
So there's like a lack of control and a lack of transparency.
Yeah,
And a real potential for like bias and unfair treatment.
absolutely.
It makes you wonder if anyone's really looking out for these workers.
Right, and that's why there are, increasing discussions about the need for stronger regulations and worker protections in the gig economy.
So like, what would that look like?
Well, there's a growing movement advocating for things like portable benefits,
Okay.
minimum wage guarantees for gig workers,
Okay.
and greater transparency in these algorithmic decision-making processes.
Yeah, like that seems really important
It is
to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done to kind of create a more equitable system for gig workers.
Absolutely.
But before we get too deep into the solutions, I'm kind of curious about the historical context here.
Sure.
Because you mentioned earlier that the gig economy isn't entirely new.
Right.
And I gotta say, like, it feels like a very modern phenomenon to me.
It does, and it has exploded in recent years.
Yeah.
But the basic concept of gig work has actually existed for centuries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, think about like pre-industrial artisans.
Okay.
Like blacksmiths, weavers, cobblers.
Okay.
They were essentially independent contractors.
Wow.
Setting their own rates, selling their goods and services directly to customers.
So they were like the freelancers of their time.
Exactly. They operated outside of that traditional employer-employee
That's fascinating.
relationship, much like a lot of gig workers today.
Wow.
And even day laborers, who have historically been engaged in temporary or project-based work.
Okay.
They also share some similarities with modern gig workers,
Interesting.
although they often faced very challenging conditions and low wages.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
So there is like a historical precedent for this type of work,
there is.
even if the scale and like the technology are vastly different today.
Absolutely.
That's so interesting.
And let's not forget about the entertainment industry,
Oh, right.
which has practically defined gig-based work for centuries.
Yeah.
Actors, musicians, performers have always navigated this world of auditions, short-term contracts.
Right.
Project-based employment.
It's so ingrained in that industry that we just like
We don't even think about
don't even think about it. Yeah.
Right, and it highlights the fact that, certain professions have always operated on this project-based, gig-driven model.
Okay.
What really distinguishes the modern gig economy is its sheer scale.
Okay.
Its reliance on technology and its penetration into a much wider range of professional sectors.
It's everywhere.
It is.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this fascinating historical backdrop,
We do.
but it's clear that the modern gig economy is presenting these unique
It is.
challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
It's like uncharted territory in a lot of ways.
In many ways it is, and it's really crucial to understand both the potential and the pitfalls of this new way of working.
For sure.
And that brings us back to, this question of how to create a more just and sustainable future for gig work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the challenges they face.
Right.
But let's not forget that there are also some real benefits to this work model.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's shift gears for a second
Okay.
and explore the positive side of the equation.
Let's do it.
Like, what are some of the upsides?
Yeah.
Why are so many people choosing this path despite the challenges?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think for a lot of people, the gig economy, it's like a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
It offers a level of freedom and flexibility that traditional jobs often lack.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those upsides.
Sure.
Like, why are so many people choosing this path despite all the challenges we just talked about?
Well, for starters, flexibility and autonomy are huge draws.
Okay.
Gig work often allows people to set their own schedules,
Right.
work from anywhere with an internet connection,
Yeah.
and choose projects that genuinely align with their interests and skills. So it's a level of control that, a lot of people crave.
Right. Especially if you felt Kind of stifled by like the traditional 9 to 5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that ties into another major benefit, which is, improved work-life balance.
Okay.
A lot of gig workers really appreciate the ability to integrate work seamlessly with other aspects of their lives.
Right.
Whether it's spending more time with family, pursuing further education, traveling, dedicating time to hobbies and passions.
So it's not just about working less. It's about working like smarter.
Exactly.
And having more control.
Yeah, it's about finding a rhythm that works for you.
Right.
Rather than being dictated by someone else's schedule.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So you've got the flexibility, the work-life balance, anything else?
Yeah, and let's not overlook the opportunities for skill development and career advancement that the gig economy offers.
Okay, how so?
Well, freelancing can be a fantastic way to gain experience.
Yeah.
Build a diverse portfolio and even advance in your field in ways that might not be possible within the confines of a traditional job.
So instead of being stuck in one specific role, you're kind of constantly learning.
Exactly.
Adapting, expanding your skill set.
Yeah. It's like you're building a personalized career path, brick by brick, based on your own unique interests and goals.
I like that.
Yeah, and for some people, the gig economy can even serve as a springboard to entrepreneurship.
Okay.
They might start by freelancing, build a client base, and then leverage those skills and connections to launch their own businesses down the line.
So it can be a path to greater independence?
Absolutely.
And like creative fulfillment?
It can be, but it's not without its challenges.
Right.
It takes a certain level of self-discipline, adaptability, and resilience to truly thrive in this environment.
So it's not for everyone?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, the historical context, but the human side. But like, what does all of this mean for the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Like, how might this shift in how we work impact society as a whole?
That's a really complex question with no easy answers.
Sure.
But it's a conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah.
As the gig economy continues to grow, its influence will likely extend beyond just the world of work.
Okay.
And impact, things like social structures, safety nets,
Right.
even our understanding of community and belonging.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for me.
Sure.
Like, what are some of the potential societal impacts that we might see as the gig economy becomes more prevalent?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the potential strain on social safety nets. Systems like healthcare retirement savings, unemployment benefits. These were designed for a traditional employment model.
Right.
And they may struggle to keep up as more people rely on gig work for their primary income.
Because they weren't really built for a workforce.
Right.
Where traditional employee relationships are less common.
Exactly. And that raises questions about how we adapt these systems to the realities of the gig economy.
Right.
Do we need to explore portable benefits that follow workers regardless of their employment status?
Interesting.
Or create new mechanisms for gig workers to access social safety nets?
So it's like we need to rethink the whole concept of a social safety net.
Yeah.
And make it more like flexible and adaptable.
Precisely.
To this new way of working.
Exactly. And beyond the economic implications, the gig economy also raises questions about the future of work-life balance. Social connections, community building.
Okay, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, while flexibility is a major perk,
right,
there's also a potential downside.
Okay.
Remote work and the lack of a traditional workplace can lead to isolation and loneliness.
Right, especially for people who really thrive on like social interaction.
Exactly.
And a sense of community.
Right. It's like that classic trade-off between freedom and connection.
It is.
How do we find that balance in a world where work is increasingly individualized and decentralized?
That's a good question.
It's a challenge that, individuals, communities, and even policymakers will need to address.
So what can we do?
Well, perhaps we need to rethink things like co-working spaces, virtual communities, and even social policies to kind of foster connections and prevent isolation in this gig-driven world.
So being mindful of the potential social consequences and finding creative ways to kind of maintain that sense of belonging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of worker rights and fair treatment.
Okay, right. We talked earlier about the challenges of like algorithm-driven management.
Exactly.
And the potential for bias and exploitation. how do we make sure that gig workers are treated fairly
Right.
and that they have a voice?
Yeah, I think it's going to require a combination of approaches.
Okay.
We need stronger regulations to protect gig workers' rights, promote transparency in platform algorithms, and ensure fair compensation.
Okay.
But we also need to empower workers to advocate for themselves, know their rights, and build collective bargaining power.
So it's a multifaceted challenge.
It is.
Requiring action from both policymakers and the workers themselves.
Absolutely. And ultimately, shaping a positive future for gig work will depend on open dialogue collaboration and a willingness to adapt and evolve as this new model of work continues to reshape the world around us.
It's a fascinating and complex landscape.
It is.
And we're just beginning to understand its full implications.
We are.
But we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored, the evolution of the gig economy.
Right.
The potential benefits and drawbacks, the broader societal implications.
Yeah, it's been a really rich discussion.
It has.
And I hope our listeners are starting to see the gig economy not as this monolithic entity, but as a really multifaceted phenomenon. With both exciting possibilities
for sure
and significant challenges that need to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive,
I
want to bring it back to the individual.
Sure.
For someone who's intrigued by the gig economy. But maybe a little hesitant to take the leap. What advice would you give them?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's understandable to be both, excited and a bit intimidated by the prospect of big work.
Sure.
So my advice would be to approach it with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to experiment. Don't feel like you have to dive in head first. Quit your day job right away.
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah. Start by identifying, your skills and passions. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And then think about how those skills could translate into freelance work or a side hustle.
So make a list of your talents.
And see how they align with what's out there.
With the gig economy.
Exactly.
And,
there are so many possibilities out there.
Like what?
Everything from writing and editing to graphic design, web development, virtual assisting, online tutoring.
Wow.
You name it.
So many things.
There's a lot out there.
And
once you have a clearer sense of, what direction you want to go in, start exploring different platforms and online communities related to your field. See what kind of gigs are in demand, what rates people are charging.
So do your research?
And how you can position yourself to be competitive.
Make sure you can actually get the gigs.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start small. Take on a few low-risk projects or offer your services at a discounted rate just to gain experience. And build your portfolio.
So build that foundation.
And as you gain confidence and momentum, you can gradually increase your rates. And take on more challenging projects.
That makes sense. What about networking? Is that important in the gig economy?
Oh, it's crucial. Connect with other freelancers in your field, attend online or in-person events, build relationships with potential clients.
So word of mouth is still a thing?
Oh, absolutely. Word of mouth is huge in the gig economy. And don't underestimate the power of self-promotion. Create a professional website or online portfolio that showcases your skills and experience.
Show off what you can do.
Exactly. Be active on social media platforms that are relevant to your field. Share your work. Engage in conversations.
So it's not enough to just be good at what you do.
No.
You got to be able to market yourself.
You have to market yourself. You have to build your personal brand. Establish yourself as an expert in your niche.
I get it.
Yeah.
Any other advice for someone who's kind of just starting out?
I would say be prepared for a learning curve. The gig economy is constantly evolving. New platforms, new technologies, new trends emerging all the time.
It's changing fast.
It is so. Embrace a mindset of continuous learning. Stay curious and be willing to adapt and adjust your strategies as needed.
So flexibility is key.
Absolutely. And don't be discouraged by setbacks. Rejection is part of the game, especially in the beginning. Learn from your experiences, refine your approach, and keep putting yourself out there.
So don't give up.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
And remember, the gig economy, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very dynamic and diverse landscape with opportunities for people from all walks of life.
Okay.
Whether you're looking for, a full-time freelance career, a side hustle to supplement your income, or just a way to explore your new passions and develop new skills.
Yeah.
The gig economy has something to offer.
It's a fascinating and ever-evolving world of work.
It really is.
Full of both challenges and opportunities.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and insights with us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
This has been a really enlightening conversation.
Good, I'm glad.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring this topic.
Yes.
Asking your own questions and engaging in these thoughtful conversations about the future of work.
Absolutely.
The gig economy is here to stay.
It is.
And understanding its nuances is essential for navigating this, ever-evolving world of work.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.